Um, Nothing particular from Maharaj, mainly the Bhishmadev's prayers, any one of the prayers is also fine. So
No, I just want to know. I want to connect with your inspiration. You're not sure?
Especially somehow the Bhishmadev is a great devotee, even though the other side of the other side in the battlefield. So he's one of the Mahajans. Somehow the when I see the picture of the Bhishmadev and Krishna, who is like lifting the wheel and going looking to attack to Bhishmadev when he is going, how the picture looks like.
You like?
Yeah, I like very much that one. And the pastime also, how the Bhishmadev meditates on Krishna when he is leaving this body, is really inspired. So that is the only.
Okay. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So reading this morning from Canto 1, Chapter 9, and two texts, 31 and 32. Let's just describe what happens before 31. Chapter 9 of Canto 1 is the passing away of Bhishmadev. And the background is Kurukshetra battle is over. The funeral for all of the dead soldiers on both sides has been completed. Yudhishthira has now assumed the throne. Some days have passed since the battle is over, and Grandfather Bhishma is still lying on the battlefield. His body pierced with arrows, so many arrows that his body isn't even touching the ground. His arrows are touching the ground, and his body is up above the ground. Bed of arrows, it's called. So to please their grandfather, they know what will please him. That will please him is that Krishna's desire has been fulfilled. And Krishna's desire was that Maharaj Yudhishthira become the king, and is he going to be all right?
Yes,
He'll behave? We'll see. He's a little to behave. Like, anyways, we'll see. Grandfather Bhishma took the position of the father of the Pandavas when Pandu died. When Pandu died, the sages in the forest advised Kunti to immediately go back to the capital and take shelter there, because she's without husband and she has small boys to look after. So she needs that protection, that shelter. And so she went back with her 5 sons. It's not going to work. The child has to go somewhere. Nice try. So the Pandavas returned, and all the intrigue and the exile of the Pandavas, and now father back, and Krishna's attempt to bring a peace settlement. Duryodhana refuses it. There's a battle. The battle's over. Krishna wanted the battle. A very intriguing scene is when the Pandavas came back after their exile, Dhritarashtra finally did the right thing, at least partially the right thing. Shh. It's not going to work. Please do the needful. Not going to work. He's a nice boy. He needs to play and have a place so he can be a nice boy. Start again. When the Pandavas came back, Dhritarashtra decided to divide the kingdom in two. And the Khandava forest, although it's not like the palace and the capital, the Khandava forest was given as the place for the Pandavas to reside and to rule. And little detail, and Maya Danava created a fantastic palace called Indraprastha. It rivaled the palace of Indra in heaven. And Duryodhana couldn't take it. The palace was bigger and better than his. But when he came to take part in that, the inauguration of Indraprastha, part of Maya Danava's power was to have that which is land look like water and that which is water look like land. So when Duryodhana came to participate in the event, he was walking as if he was walking on land, but he fell in a pond of water. And the Pandavas laughed, and the queens of Dwarka, they had also come, and they were laughing. And Yudhishthira said, "Stop laughing, it's not nice, he's an exalted person." And Krishna said, "Laugh. Laugh heartily." Because he knew what would happen. He knew that Duryodhana would become totally aggravated, that he'd been humiliated and they're laughing at me. That was it. I can't live on the same planet with the Pandavas. It's got to be war. So Krishna came, tried to appeal to Duryodhana, who rejected the appeal. There was the war. But what Krishna wanted, that reason for asking the queens and the Pandavas to laugh, was to precipitate the war. Because he wanted to rid the earth not only of Duryodhana, but all of the other demoniac kings that were part of Duryodhana's group. So that happened. It's what Krishna wanted. So what Krishna wanted was, because he came to this earth for the purpose of removing the demoniac kings from earth, having fulfilled Yudhishthira understood that's what Krishna wanted. Otherwise he wouldn't have engaged in the battle. It's what Krishna wanted. So he came before Grandfather Bhishma in his royal attire, with crown and the whole deal, as king, and his brothers in royal attire. Because that's what Krishna wanted, and whatever Krishna wants, that's what Grandfather Bhishma wants. And so it was to please Grandfather Bhishma, seeing them all, and Krishna came with them. And at the same time, to please Grandfather Bhishma, it was understood that Yudhishthira was still feeling terrible. That so that I can become king, all these people are killed, and all those kinds of sentiments. Krishna tried to appease the mind of Yudhishthira. Krishna tried to appease the mind of Yudhishthira, but Yudhishthira would not be appeased. And there was a reason. Because Krishna wanted Grandfather Bhishma to do it. Krishna wanted more honor to his devotee than to himself, so he couldn't do it so that Bhishmadev could do it. And Bhishmadev, so the beginning of this chapter 9 is the wonderful words of Grandfather Bhishma appeasing the mind of Yudhishthira. And it's beautiful how Krishna speaks, how Bhishma speaks. And then after appeasing his mind and convincing him it's the plan of Krishna, there he is, it's been his plan all along, now he wants you to rule, so rule. Be the king, without hesitation, without lamentation, without any of those negative feelings. So he accepts, just by hearing from Grandfather Bhishma, then says, now if I'm supposed to rule, please instruct me how I should fulfill my duties. So here's Grandfather Bhishma lying on a bed of arrows giving a Bhagavatam class about how to do the duties of a king, and details and details and details and details. So Grandfather Bhishma's life, as we're going to hear in the verse and purport, has been giving himself selflessly to all in different capacities. As we heard, he's a Mahajan. He's a great authority, and so people turned to the great authority to understand what to do in different complicated circumstances. And with an important exception, which was also part of Krishna's plan, that is, not stopping the act of disgrace that was happening with Draupadi. That was also part of Krishna's plan. But otherwise, Grandfather Bhishma was the authority that decided things, and that everybody accepted. So he is extending and extending and extending and extending, and going way back to benediction that he received. He received a benediction as a young man that he would not have to give up his body unless he chose to. He could not be killed. He could be defeated. He was defeated by an arrangement that he suggested how he could be defeated, but he wasn't killed. He couldn't give up his body unless he wanted to give up his body. And so, after completing his Bhagavatam class with Maharaj Yudhishthira, the sun started moving in the northerly direction. Now we heard a little bit 2 evenings ago. Chapter 9 was the summary of our discussion. And in the end of chapter 8, yogis leave their body when the sun is moving in the northerly direction. And they don't, this is now those that can choose voluntarily when to leave or not, they don't leave when the sun is moving in the southerly direction. So when the sun started to move in the northerly direction, Grandfather Bhishma is going to do what yogis do. He's going to enter samadhi. And the stage to come before entering samadhi is what we're going to hear about this morning. Pratyahara. Pratyahara is one of the stages of the Eightfold Yoga System. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara. Number 5. Pratyahara. He is going to withdraw his senses from those activities that he was engaged in service to Krishna. He doesn't like not that his arms go inside his body and his legs go inside his body, but rather consciousness being extended outside to deal with important service for Krishna. He's going to now consolidate that. And we hear in chapter 13 of Canto 1, this is chapter 9, Dhritarashtra did the same thing. Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, they knew. Kings, not just, rishis and tapasvis and brahmanas, they knew this procedure. It was just standard. A qualified person knows these things. So Dhritarashtra knew. And Dhritarashtra also did. And grandfather knew, grandfather Bhishma knew, and grandfather Bhishma also did. Now, grandfather Bhishma didn't have his body ignite in fire, as did Dhritarashtra. He had a different destination. His destination was back to Godhead, because his mind was completely fixed upon the personality of God. We find this detail discussed when Vidur advises Dhritarashtra. There's 3 stages of detachment from the world, and Dhritarashtra isn't capable of what Bhishma is capable of, because Bhishma's consciousness was pure and Dhritarashtra's consciousness was impure. So he could do the initial only, that is, breaking from his worldly duty and leaving the world in that state of detachment. Because you leave the world in the state of attachment, and the mind carries you to another material birth. So Dhritarashtra, although he had engaged in many sinful activities, he was actually inside, he was a virtuous, educated, very elevated person. But his attachments made him, or induced him to have that consciousness covered and do foolish things, do detrimental things, do bad things, unfortunately. So come on up a little bit forward, because more people seem to be coming in. Thank you. So Bhishmadev is a great devotee, that we heard already. He's a Mahajan, and Mahajan means amongst the devotees, he's topmost. There's 12 out of the whole history of mankind that are topmost, and he's topmost. At the same time, grandfather Bhishma is a great yogi who has this benediction, he can leave his body at any time. Now, devotee can also have mystic powers. Fantastic example, earlier, in the 3rd canto, is Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni was a pure devotee. Kardama Muni was highly elevated in knowledge. Kardama Muni was highly elevated in detachment. And Kardama Muni had mystic powers that just were astounding. Just by his will, he didn't even have to say mantra, by his will, a whole flying city manifested. Very powerful mystic yogi, not an ordinary fellow. So Bhishma is also not an ordinary fellow. He's a great personality in devotion to Krishna, and he's a mystic. He has power that he would not exhibit except for service to Krishna. So the verses that we're reading this morning, this is all background to get a picture of lying on the bed of arrows, having given yet again, in the most uncomfortable circumstance, giving full instruction to Yudhisthira as for their whole life, he has given them instruction. Imagine having Grandfather Bhishma as your father, or the one who trains you from the beginning of life. Amazing. They have utmost regard for him. He has utmost regard for them. Because of their connection with Krishna, it's time for him to depart, and he departs. So these two verses are, the first one is withdrawing, the next one is his glorification. Text 30, Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 30. We'll just read the previous one. While Bhishmadev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will. That's the previous verse. So that's a signal. He's going to leave his body now. Thereupon that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields, and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else, and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. Actually, we're supposed to read 31 and 32. Yeah. So 31. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendentally to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. So Prabhupada's purport. The material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. Identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. For a pure devotee of the Lord, like Bhishmadev, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. In the presence of the sun, there's no possibility that darkness can stand. Therefore, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all material contamination was completely removed, and Bhishmadev was thus able to be transcendentally situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. The soul is originally pure, and so also the senses. By material contamination, the senses assume the role of imperfection and self and impurity. By revival of contact with the Supreme Pure Lord Krishna, the senses again become freed. from material contaminations. Bhishmadev attained all these transcendental conditions prior to leaving the material body because of the Lord's presence. The Lord is the controller and benefactor of all living beings. That is the verdict of all the Vedas. He is the supreme eternity and living entity amongst all the eternal living beings. The reference is quoted below. And he alone provides all the necessities for all kinds of living beings. Thus, he provided all facilities to fulfill the transcendental desires of his great devotee Bhishmadev, who prayed as follows. So these verses are selected to begin his prayers. And this is the preparation for his prayers. See, there's this mysterious language in the Bhagavatam, sometimes we find, where a devotee who's engaged in devotional service comes to this stage of trance, and then it says, and then devotional service begins. And if it's the mystery is, what was going on before? Like, what about us? Are we engaged in devotional service or not? We're not engaged in devotional service until the stage of trance is there. And the mystery is, that's what pure devotional service is, what devotional service is. Devotional service is pure, say it that way. Devotional service is without material contamination. So devotional service is pure. The soul is pure. The original condition is pure. However, when the living entity turns away from Krishna, then, as we hear, one gets a material body, and one identifies with the material body, and then consciousness becomes covered or contaminated. One becomes covered by illusion or Maya. Just like it's been very cloudy the last few days, now it's sunny. So when there's clouds in the sky, the sun is still there. Very simple example. But the clouds block the heat and the light of the sun. So the sun is still there. There's no less heat and no less illumination. The day when it's cloudy and the day compared to the day that's not cloudy. But our experience of the sun is different because of the clouds, the cloudiness. So similarly, the living entity is covered. Consciousness is covered by using the language of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, by the mist of ignorance and the clouds of anarthas. Mist. Did you get much mist here in, like, fog? Yes? In Minnesota? Okay. Commonly, in North India, it's really common in the winter because the daytime, the sun heats the land. And the land stays warm. But the air at night becomes cool. And so the moisture forms mist or fog. Very, very common. And then as the sun rises, there's still some fog, but when the direct rays of the sun hit the mist, poof, it's just like this, not slowly, it's just gone. And that very same example is used in Canto 1, Chapter 7, Niharam Iva Bhaskaram. The process of hearing, it's the verse that Prabhupada puts in the preface of every single volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. The topics of Krishna are direct, and that topic of Krishna, which is directly experiencing Krishna, it has the effect, just like Bhaskara, the sunlight, at once dissipates the fog. Similarly, we're hearing in the purport, when Krishna came before Grandfather Bhishma, whatever may have been there, that because of his involvement with matter, generally speaking, when we get involved with matter, what happens? We get attached. And when we get attached to matter, consciousness becomes covered. It's something very similar to fog and mist, or clouds and mist, or clouds and fog. Where do the clouds come from? The sun. Sun striking water, and water evaporates, and you get clouds, or you get mist, or fog. So the sun creates that which covers the sun. Similarly, that which covers our pure consciousness arises when our attention is turned away from Krishna, and then one gets a material body, and one identifies with the material body, and we don't understand who we are and who is Krishna. So Bhishmadev has been, our process is devotional service, where we don't run away from the body or the senses or contacting the object of the senses with the senses. We go for it, because the original condition of purity, just like it says, the soul is originally pure, the sense is originally pure. But due to material contact, in the mood of trying to be the enjoyer of the sense objects, consciousness becomes covered and bewildered. So whatever residual effect may have been there, Bhishmadev seeing Krishna, and now he's focusing his attention completely on Krishna. That fog and mist, poof, at once gone. Not like he was a bewildered soul, but it's explaining our condition is we're bewildered souls, deluded by Maya, and one of the outstanding features is we don't even know that we're deluded. We're like everybody else, identifying with the temporary. But the identifying with the temporary is problematic. It causes consciousness to become covered. So, this is what mystics do. They, at the right time, they have learned the art. They're trained to fix their mind completely upon Supersoul, and fixing the mind completely upon Supersoul, then the mind becomes cleansed, and the senses become cleansed, and consciousness becomes cleansed, and that's what yogis do, or mystics do. So we're being advised, or we're hearing, that Grandfather Bhishma knew that art, and he's incapacitated. His body is he can't move. He can't get up and, offer obeisances or anything. He's in this difficult situation. But he knew the art of fixing his mind, even in difficult situation. That's really important. I'll say it again, in a different way. Prabhupada explains this word dhira, D-H-I-R-A. Dhira means one whose mind is undisturbed, even when there's cause of disturbance. Just like, say, take a pebble or a stone and throw it in some water, and there's a little splash and there's concentric circles that go out. It's just nature. But what's it like if you throw a pebble and it doesn't disturb the surface of the water? There's no such thing with material. But spiritual power is the mind can become undisturbed even if there's cause for disturbance, and the only way that's possible is the mind is fixed on Krishna. So much so that the verse says, text 31, the pain of the arrow wounds went away. Now, the pain didn't go away, the arrow wounds didn't go away, but what it means is his consciousness was completely withdrawn, this pratyahara thing, and fixed upon Krishna. And in that condition, although the C cells were firing, the synapses of the neurological system were operating, his consciousness was completely elsewhere. Normally his consciousness is invested in his services, so he's certainly conscious of stuff that's going on outside. But he's now, in a mystic manner, withdrawing his consciousness from that and fixing his consciousness upon Krishna. He's seeing Krishna with his eyes. Exact same is when Prahlad comes before Lord Nrsimhadev. He humbly, with palms folded, comes and offers his obeisances at the feet of Lord Nrsimhadev. Lord Nrsimhadev, with his hands, he lifts Prahlad. He places his hand or paw upon Prahlad's head. Prahlad experiences ecstatic symptoms. His whole body erupts in ecstasy. His mind is totally absorbed in samadhi. And he's seeing the Supreme Lord eye to eye, face to face. It's similar, almost the same. Slightly, circumstances are different, but the stage of consciousness is the same. Prahlad isn't riddled with arrows. Bhishmadev is. But their consciousness is the same. Prahlad is another Mahajan, great authority, as is Bhishma. So that's his consciousness. He's in trance, samadhi. There's this nice description in Bhagavad Gita, you can look it up later, where it, chapter 6, verses 20 through 23, details what samadhi is, what's it like, what happens inside and outside for someone who's in samadhi. And the stage of nirvana is achieved, and beyond nirvana. I'm using that language because one of the university programs at Emory University in Atlanta, I was asked, that was the topic that was assigned, beyond nirvana, the path of yoga. I found that was, anyway, I liked the topic. I don't know how much the people understood, but nirvana, you read the purport, nirvana, popular Buddhist word, means cessation of material existence. Now, material existence doesn't cease, but your involvement in the consciousness of material existence is withdrawn, and you have to go somewhere. So if you're Buddhist, you go to nothingness. And if your grandfather Bhishma, it goes to Krishnaness. It goes to the path of yoga, beyond nirvana. The path of yoga is linking with the Supreme. It was not like before he wasn't linked with the Supreme, but he's just exclusively. He's not just kind of slowing down because he's an old man. He's totally terminating, extending, come on in, please come in, extending his senses into the field of activity for serving the Pandavas. He's not doing that now. He's done it. He's done it for umpteen years. Now he's preparing to leave. And then, so next verse is the first of his prayers, text 32. Bhishmadev said, "Let me invest my matihi," is the Sanskrit word, thinking, feeling, and willing. Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending on the material world, although from him only the material world is created. Purport. Because Bhishmadev was a statesman, the head of the Kuru dynasty, a great general, and the leader of Kshatriyas, his mind was strewn over so many subjects, and his thinking, feeling, and willing were engaged in different matters. Now, in order to achieve pure devotional service, he wanted to invest all powers of thinking, feeling, and willing entirely in the Supreme Being, Lord Krishna. He is described herein as the leader of the devotees and all-powerful. Although Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, he himself descends on earth to bestow upon his pure devotees the boon of devotional service. He descends sometimes as Lord Krishna as he is, and sometimes as Lord Chaitanya. Both are leaders of the pure devotees. Pure devotees of the Lord have no desire other than the service of the Lord, and therefore they are called Sattvata. The Lord is the chief among such Sattvatas. Bhishmadev therefore had no other desires. Unless one is purified from all sorts of material desires, the Lord does not become one's leader. Desires cannot be wiped out, but they have only to be purified. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself, that he gives his instruction from within the heart of a pure devotee who is constantly engaged in service of the Lord. Such instruction is given not for any material purpose, but only for going back home, back to Godhead. 10.10 Bhagavad Gita, that's Yena mamopi yanti te, tesham satati yuktanam, etc. Krishna gives bodhi, the intelligence, how to come to him, to those persons who are constantly engaged in devotional service. That's 10.10. I looked up, Jimmy has a copy of the original Bhagavad Gita reprinted, original Bhagavatam, so I looked it up. And there's a little asterisk that also says this previous sentence, desires cannot be wiped out, but they have only to be purified. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself, that he gives his instruction from within the heart of a pure devotee who is constantly engaged in devotional service, in the service of the Lord. So yesham twantakatam papam janam panyakaram te dvanda mohanir bhaktavajante mam krutavata. Prabhupada quotes that verse, Bhagavad Gita. Same. There's a reciprocation with the devotee, that someone that doesn't turn their attention in that mood of wishing to be in exclusive service of the Lord, he doesn't interfere. He doesn't force himself upon the living entity. He's ready. He's more than ready. But he doesn't interfere with the living entity's free will. When the living entity by free will turns their attention to him exclusively, he's there. Or even a little bit, he's there. Immediately he's there. No delay. For the ordinary man who wants to lord it over material nature, the Lord does not only the Lord not only sanctions and becomes a witness of activities, but he never gives the non-devotee instructions for going back to Godhead. That is the difference in dealings by the Lord with different living beings, both the devotee and the non-devotee. He is the leader of all living beings as the king of the state rules both prisoners and the free citizens. But his dealings are different in terms of devotee and non-devotee. Non-devotees never care to take any instruction from the Lord, and therefore the Lord is silent in their case, although he witnesses all their activities and awards them the necessary results, good or bad. The devotees are above this material goodness and badness. They are progressive on the path of transcendence, and therefore they have no desire for anything material. The devotee also knows Sri Krishna as the original Narayana, because Lord Sri Krishna, by his plenary portion, appears as the Karanadakshayi Vishnu, the original source of all material creation. The Lord also desires the association of his pure devotees, and for them only the Lord descends on the earth and enlivens them. The Lord appears out of his own will. He is not forced by the conditions of material nature. He is therefore described here as Vibhu, or the Almighty, for he is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. So Prabhupada is, of course, expanding on the message of the prayers of Bhishma. Bhishma very clearly, as he already exhibited during the Rajasuya Yagya, he was requested by Maharaj Yudhisthira to speak some words of appreciation of the most exalted person in the assembly, and Bhishma was selected, naturally, and Bhishma naturally spoke about Krishna in similar language. So it's not that Bhishma didn't know who is Krishna. He knew who was Krishna. There's this interesting description from Lilamrita where somebody came, this is like super early in the Hare Krishna movement, somebody came to San Francisco. Prabhupada had gone to San Francisco to fulfill an invitation to be present at a rock concert with some at that time, very, very, very famous rock bands. And somehow Prabhupada was also invited along with the rock bands. And so he said yes. The devotees were a little surprised, Swamiji's going to go to... But, he wanted to take that audience and give them the gift of Krishna. So he was ready to do things that sannyasis normally don't do. Unthinkable. But, he didn't go there for enjoyment purposes. He went there for giving Krishna purposes. So he was in San Francisco, and they had a little storefront, Frederick Street. I visited that place. Really tiny. I mean, about this size storefront, maybe smaller, and maybe about the same size. So he was there, and different people were coming to see him, and there was somebody that was like really, really new, and he heard that there was going to be an initiation, and he asked, "Can I be initiated?" So it was actually somebody was asking on his behalf. This somebody had come, kind of like this long-haired hippie guy. And Prabhupada asked him, Prabhupada asked him, who is Krishna? And he paused, and he said the right thing. I mean, his realization, who knows, but Krishna is God. He's the supreme person. And then Prabhupada said, so the second question is, who are you? And paused, and he said, I'm the eternal servant of God, eternal servant of Krishna. Prabhupada said, okay, you can be initiated. Pretty quick exam. Now that was at a certain stage when Prabhupada was wanting very much to expand. His age was elder, He had 2 heart attacks when crossing the ocean. He didn't know how long he was going to live. He had this mission to fulfill. Krishna was giving him doors to walk through, and he was walking through them. He was taking risks, that just being very merciful. And so he gave that, he said that person had to shave his head. And that the person decided, I don't want to get initiated. And then he came back later and said, why do I have to shave my head? Because Christ had long hair, Lord Chaitanya had long hair, and somebody else had long hair. And Prabhupada said, because you're my disciple, I say shave your head. So he shaved his head. He got initiated. And later he became a sannyasi. And later, after that, he left Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada was in this expansive, final stages of his life. He didn't know how long, and he wanted to get some groundwork. And since he was there in San Francisco for that purpose of reaching all these counterculture people, anyway, he's very liberal. Go back to the Bhagavatam verse for this morning. Grandfather Bhishma was at this topmost stage of bhakti, and he knew exactly what to do and how to do, and he's very powerful warrior, powerful minister, powerful governing person, leader, and he knows, he's saying, you're the leader of the sattvatas. Sattvatas, those are situated in Sat, transcendence. And you're the leader. You're our worshipable superior, the supreme. So he knew all those things. He said it before, now he's saying it again. His fixing his consciousness upon Krishna. And then so the rest of the prayers of Bhishma follow. And then he departs. So let's see if there's any discussion. Yes?
So, Bhishmadev, when we look at the life of Bhishmadev, all through his life, he was engaged in as a warrior, as administration. Seemingly, he appears to have involved in so much of material things, but at the end of his life, he could focus. But if we take our lives, if we are involved in so much of material things, we won't be able to focus. So what made him to have that focus? So
Purity. Without purity, you don't have focus. There's a phrase. Trishna, if you look in your handheld device, text 32, iti matir upakalpita trishna. Sounds like Krishna. Trishna means absorption in, and Trishna means without absorption in. While he was engaged in activity, he wasn't absorbed in being the enjoyer of the object of the senses. We are, according to Haridas Thakur, one of the causes of anarthas in the heart is asat trishna. Asat trishna is thirst for the impermanent, or absorption in the impermanent. That gives rise to impurities of heart, and then it blocks our ability to do like you described, what Bhishma could do. But so while he was doing these things, what's the difference between us and him is, while doing these things, he wasn't absorbed in being the enjoyer of the temporary. He was doing service for Krishna, Rishikena and Rishikesha Sevanam. Purity. As Prabhupada says, the soul is originally pure and the senses are originally pure. So he was in this purified state when he was extending his senses. So, but we're not. So now how do we get there? By practice of bhakti. Do what we do, very simple, for the satisfaction of Krishna. And that brings purification. The chanting of the holy name and what we're doing right now, just hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, that also purifies. And we need some practical activity. Because when we get up, we're going to do practical activity. Not just, kirtan, as we did at the beginning. Nice kirtan, by the way. The young man who was singing. And hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Shravanam Kirtanam. And then comes, the rest of what we do. So the rest of what we do is also meant for purification. And so what makes our activity bring purification? The consciousness of you do it for Krishna, that rests upon your hearing and chanting. So do your hearing and chanting nicely, and do your activities consciously, cultivating the intention of pleasing Krishna. Not just, doing your homework for your school, or taking care of the kitchen for the family, or going to the office and doing what you do at the office, and the duties. Those are our. Bhishmadev had another set. We have another set. But the principle doesn't change. You do what you do for Krishna, and that consciousness is awakened by hearing and chanting done attentively and properly. So we cultivate purity so that we can accomplish what Bhishmadev accomplished. Something else? Yeah?
So, when we talk about Bhishmadev,
When we talk about
Bhishmadev. So he knows Krishna.
Yes, he does.
He does. So he recognizes him as
Yes.
the Supreme Lord
Yes.
and everything.
Yes.
And but why does he choose to be on the other side? If he realizes that is Dharma, that is the right one, that is Krishna, and that is the good. He is on the other side.
I understand the question.
Yes. So did he deliberately choose
Yes.
because of situations, or does he want something?
Yes. A pure devotee, knowingly or unknowingly, they have only one interest. And that one interest is pleasing Krishna. So there's two reasons, whether knowingly or unknowingly. This is rasa. The first answer is rasa. Grandfather Bhishma, according to the scriptures, although he's grandfather, his relationship with Krishna is dasya. Just like Kunti, although she's, the relationship of mother, the age-wise and, relationship-wise, she sees herself as a servant. So Grandfather Bhishma, his rasa with Krishna is dasya. He just wants whatever Krishna wants, like Hanuman towards Ram. Difference, but similar. And one of the things that Krishna likes is chivalry. That's a secondary rasa. So Grandfather Bhishma took the opposite side, so he could have a tussle with Krishna in the mood of chivalry. So that when Grandfather Bhishma is firing arrows at Arjuna, Krishna gets in the way and takes the arrows in his chest and goes, ah. And Arjuna goes, oh no. And Grandfather Bhishma is happy to give pleasure to Krishna. But when it's a science of rasa, when secondary rasa rises, it eclipses the primary rasa, although the primary rasa is still fully intact. It is not evident because the secondary rasa, so the chivalry thing. And he just wanted to please Krishna, be in the opposite side, because how can you have that chivalry unless you're on the opposite side? And then another second answer, Prabhupada explains, Krishna wanted to show, and so Bhishma took the position of doing what Krishna wanted, knowingly or unknowingly. Krishna wanted to show, if you do not protect women, whoever you may be, even Grandfather Bhishma, you'll be destroyed. Bhishma had the opportunity to stop. He didn't. So Krishna wanted to show, whoever you are, you don't give protection to women, finished.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
One question, sir.
Yeah.
Simple question. So Bhishmadev is a pure devotee, right?
Yes.
And association to pure devotee always goes to the Lord Krishna, right? But pure devotee is on other side. So association with pure devotee, the other side people also go to the Lord Krishna, or they the question.
I'm not sure I understood your question. You want to know that the other people who Grandfather Bhishma was fighting with, did they get liberation?
Yeah.
Yes. They got liberation because when they left their body, they were seeing Krishna, or Krishna was on the battlefield with them. Therefore, not that they're, so what kind of liberation is another thing, but liberation. Did that answer your question? Yes?
In the purport second verse, Prabhupada was mentioning that non-devotees don't get the instructions from the Lord.
Well, we distribute Bhagavad Gitas to everybody. I'm sure there's some non-devotees that get Bhagavad Gitas. And the instruction is there, but it doesn't go in. Or Mayavadis. They read Bhagavad Gita. They don't get, Sridhar to Krishna instruction. They get, Sridhar to something else. Because they're Mayavadis. When we give a public class, there may be, devotionally inclined people and non-devotionally inclined people. They get the instruction, but it doesn't go in. That's my sense of it bounces. It doesn't penetrate. Okay?
Maharaj, in this case,
Because Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. He's affectionate. Samoham sarvabhuteshu navid. So he wants, but the door's locked. He doesn't interfere. He wants. He's inspiring them from within. They're ignoring it. So he gives them another kind of intelligence: how to be a thief, or how to make money, or how to be a drunkard, or how to, whatever it is.
Maharaj, in this case, Krishna is very silent, right? Silent in those who are not taking the instructions.
Yeah.
So what is the impact? Why Krishna is silent?
What inspires Krishna to be silent?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to interfere. He's still compassionate, and he's still, he sends messengers, he sends scriptures, he canvasses, outside and inside. people shut down. Isn't it? So he doesn't directly enter into the seat of consciousness because he doesn't interfere with free will. But he makes himself available in so many ways. Pictures, scripture, kirtan, public kirtan, makes himself available. Deity, from the heart. They've got another channel. They don't hear that signal.
So Maharaj, Maharaj, one question. Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead.
So, what is the significance of Bhishmadev being on bed of arrows in the battlefield? So he was there for quite a long time.
Long time.
Yeah. Then where other dead
Whole bunch of
bodies,
stuff was going on.
And vultures were eating and all that. What is the significance of that
I don't know.
pastime?
It's puzzle to me too. He's
Because,
grandfather Bhishma. Why didn't they take care of him immediately? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
Because he's such a royal king, and
I'm with you. Respect goes there first.
No, but he was waiting for Uttarayan or something. He was waiting for.
But he was waiting. But why did people wait for him?
Right. Okay. That's the question. Okay.
Yeah.
But isn't he has a bone that he can leave
Yeah,
his
yes,
body
yes.
according-
That's what he did. But the question was, why did everybody else let him lie out in the battlefield for a whole bunch of days? While they're doing funerals and this and that and the other. Why didn't they take care of him immediately?
Yes.
In that case, they didn't, Bhishma said because he want to see the Yudhishthira Maharaj.
No, you're not getting the point.
Huh?
Why didn't they take care of him, left him in the battlefield where there are all vultures, dead bodies, everything is lying around, but they didn't take care of him as a royal king, even on the
Yes.
bed of arrows. That's the question.
Yes.
Even I got, yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Right.
My question about emotional part of all the pure devotees and exactly about Bhishmadev. When we're doing some activities, they wake up some emotions during those activities. And when Bhishmadev was fighting, and because he's pure and he understood what is going on, what kind of emotions did he felt during this fight? Is it was a real battle agony, or it was just pleasure of that he is doing his service to Krishna?
Well, I don't know anything from our acharyas or scripture that gives the answer to your question. But
What's the
the
question, ma'am?
the question is, while Bhishma was on the battlefield for 18 days, well, at least the first 9 days he was standing up, what was he feeling? What was his emotions as he was doing this battle for the 9 days, and then something happened after that? Then he's on his bed of arrows. He had to put Drona in charge as general. So we hear from Duryodhana, right? Duryodhana?
Yeah.
Okay. Duryodhana came to Grandfather Bhishma and said, you're number one general, and you're fulfiller of Dharma. You're the upholder of Dharma, and you're not acting according to the Dharma of the commander-in-chief of the army. You're sloughing off. You're slacking because of your affection for the Pandavas. So he was doing, somewhat, but not full. Somewhat. But no one could defeat the Pandavas except Bhishma. So do it. And then he took a vow, I'll do it tomorrow. And that's the rest of it. So going through the motions. It's something we can say from what, at least what Duryodhana had to say. His heart wasn't into it. He wasn't fighting as in the manner of, yeah, the full-on Kshatriya, do it for Krishna, nothing can stop me. He was doing out of a sense of duty. The sense of duty was, by dharma codes, he had been maintained by the royal family, and having been maintained by the royal family, he then has obligation to act on behalf of the royal family that was maintaining him. In contrast, Vidura was greatly relieved when he was insulted by Duryodhana. It says, when he left the assembly, his bow and arrow were left at the door, signifying, thank you very much, now I don't have to make this awful choice of fighting on your behalf, according to Dharma. But Bhishma did. According to, it's not the proper discrimination of Dharma. Why did he make that improper discrimination? Why did he fight on behalf of the bad guys? Krishna wanted something, and so forth.
Overall, this pastime is very bewildering.
Yeah.
Because Bhishmadev is very difficult to understand. What is his position versus the way how he acted holistically. Suppose Shantanu Maharaj, wanted to marry Satyavati. He is such a king. How can he get married and his son can be taking vow not to marry for his entire life? That itself is sort of a very puzzling. And on top of it, Draupadi whole pastime is like a chief general of police, sort of.
Well, the answer to that one we already have. The answer to that one is Krishna had a plan.
Yeah.
And we go back, and even Krishna had a plan.
Exactly.
Just like, here's for example, Krishna's plan thing. That language, Krishna's plan. Krishna had a plan for being born as the 8th son of Devaki. He revealed the plan before it happened. What's going to happen next? He called Yogamaya and said, this 7th child, that's Balaram. Transfer. He doesn't need anybody to help him doing anything, but he specifically said, transfer Balaram to the womb of Rohini. And then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. It's all planned. There's free will. Living entities have free will, and the devotee acts according to the will, whether Krishna says this is the plan or not. So back to the Santanu. Why would Santanu agree? It was already done. What's he going to say? No, I can't accept this girl. He's already taken a vow. He's not going to break his vow, so it's somehow the plan of Krishna. So, they're more highly evolved living entities operate on a plane other than, necessarily straight, from point A to point B logic. They're moved by something else, in addition to, logic and good conduct. There's the intention of Krishna that moves the lives of these people, Grandfather Bhishma included. And the whole thing, the 3 daughters, Amba, Ambika, and Balika, and the whole thing, that in all that intrigue, it's all part of a plan. So that Amba could be born as Sikandi, and the whole thing. Bhishma could be destroyed because Sikandi became a man. Oh my God. Pretty complex.
Very puzzling.
But it's part of the plan of the Lord. It is said that the affairs of love don't move straight. I use that expression, from A to B. It's like a snake. To go from A to B, it goes like this. So when it goes over here, and then it's going over there, and then it's going over there. So it's just part of the Leela of the Supreme Lord. He is engaging Bhishma in his affairs, his loving affairs with Bhishma. That's how to understand it. It's bewildering when we use our mundane logic, but a pure devotee doesn't go by that straight line of things.
Among all Mahajans, 12 Mahajans, Swayambho, Narada, Shambhu, Kumaro, Kapilo, Manu, Prahlado, Janako, Bhishma, Baliro, Sakir, Vayam. Out of all these 12 Mahajans, just Bhishmadev, though he is sort of not going in straight line to Krishna, like the other devotees, for example, Prahlad and Narada, everybody's their path is straight. So they have not done all these material sort of activities which are our human mind cannot even think through. Suppose if women being disrobed, how can he, like a statesman, sit in the assembly, just let it go? It's really
Well,
impossible.
Narada does some things. I got you. You're disturbed. But Narada goes and tells Kamsa, hey, the eighth son of Devaki is over there. I want you to know. The eighth son of Devaki is on the other side. He's over there in Vrindavan. So Kamsa goes, I'm going to get, Vasudev lied to me. He said he'd give the eighth child, but he took the eighth child. I'm going to kill Vasudev. And Narada said, no. It's the eighth child, not Vasudev. So why did he do that? To hasten the pastime of Krishna coming to do what Krishna had to do. So he would do things that were puzzling too. There's others without going into it too much. So don't pick on Bhishma. They act according to the will of Krishna. That's it. They know Dharma. That's why they're the Mahajans. And they act according to the will of Krishna. And we need our acharyas to help us understand, hey, why did Bhishma do that? Why did Bhishma do that? Why did Narada do this? And so on. Why did Shukadeva Goswami, when he was born, just leave home? He just got up and left. And Vyasa had to go find him. You know that story.
Yeah.
So, puzzling. Why didn't he go in a straight line? Just sit there and hear Srimad Bhagavatam would have been simple. But he had to go through this complicated thing to get to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And so forth. There's other examples. The devotees of the Lord and the Lord, if they're fully acting under the internal potency, so don't second guess the internal potency. You may not understand, but don't second guess. You could say it's bewildering, but don't get irritated.
They're trying to understand,
Okay, but you're more than that. You're like, hey, what's good? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for clarifying on this thing. So, I have one question, they are pure devotees, so they understand what Lord desires, what is His will.
Well, whether they understand or they don't understand, they act.
But how?
Like Maharaj Parikshit. Look what he did. No, did he understand what he was doing when he put that snake around Shamak Rishi's shoulders? Krishna wants me to do this. Whoop. He was just acting according to the internal potency of the Supreme Lord, knowingly or unknowingly. That's the position. They don't do anything other than for the Supreme Lord's pleasure. That's their position. Now, what's the plan of the Lord? Grandfather Bhishma says in trying to pacifying Yudhisthira. Nobody can understand. Great sages and this and that, they've tried, and so don't try to understand. Why all this difficulty? At the will of the Lord. Just accept that. That's Grandfather Bhishma's advice. Same to you. we make a distinction between, as this purport that we read, devotee, non-devotee. And the devotee, whether they're clearly understanding, Maharaj Parikshit thinking, okay, Krishna wants the Bhagavatam to be recited, so he wants me to put the snake around Shamakrishi, so he'll subtle curse me, so I'll have to die, and then Shukadeva Goswami will come and narrate Bhagavatam, so that's his plan, so I guess I just have to do it. A pure devotee may not understand the plan. Pure devotee, what to speak of you and me. And things happen in life, in our life, it's not just Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami and Narada and Bhishma. We don't understand. That's okay. We can try to understand, but don't get irritated if you can't understand. There's a plan. And for the thing that we need to concern ourselves, this is Grandfather Bhishma's advice earlier in this 9th chapter. 3 things, very simple. Maharaj Yudhishthira, or any one of us. When things happen that you don't understand, here's where your attention should go. 3 things. Have your activities been according to the codes of Dharma? 2. When you implement those codes of Dharma, have you done so under the jurisdiction and sanction of great souls, Brahmanas and Vaishnavas? 3. When you do those things, are you doing it for the purpose of pleasing Krishna? That's where your attention should go. And if any of those are out of alignment, put them in alignment. But the why and yada yada yada, we can't understand. Do those 3 things. It's right in his instructions to Yudhishthira. Very practical. Last question, we're going to end.
So, regarding Bhishmadev Maharaj, we can relate to his life very much because he was doing all his activities at the same time
Krishna conscious.
Krishna conscious. That's where we are. And
Yes,
he was
it's
surrounded
perfectly pertinent to our situation. Exactly. Same Arjuna. Mama nusmara yujyacha. Always think of Krishna and engage in your prescribed duty. In his case, it was yudhya, fighting. And Grandfather Bhishma, it was all kinds of things. And ours is whatever our duty is. We're this and we're that and the other, etc. And we can get perplexed and not know what our duty is. Do we turn left or right? Do we do this or do we do that? Do we do it this way or do it that way? We can get, but it's the same principle. Now.
So my question is, what our duty is? Like dharma, as Bhagavatam says, there is lower dharma and upper dharma, right?
That's right.
So, like Bhishma Maharaj, lower dharma was to service to his father. He gave that vow of celibacy in service to his father. And he gave the vow of protecting his kingdom and his duty as a Kshatriya. And it appears that this lower dharma was interfering or in contradiction to his upper dharma of serving Krishna. And that's where we are in all the time. We want to serve our parents, but something else happens. Or
well, that's not I'm sorry. You just made a big jump. Because sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. So something interferes with mamekam sharanam. That trumps anything else. So now, what's the best way to mamekam sharanam? And that rules. You say, including serving parents and whatever other kinds of dharma there may be. It's tricky, yes. It requires refinement of discretion, yes. It's not contradiction of lower dharma, higher dharma. then Mahajana Yena Katasa Panta. We go by higher authority. The Mahajans.
It appears to me that his vow to protect his kingdom, to serve his parents, etc., wasn't. The fight between Krishna and Arjun was like that.
But
more than
we
one
answered
man.
that. He was doing, his heart was to please Krishna. When he took the vow, I will kill Arjuna,
Yes.
Krishna's dearmost friend. I will kill Krishna's dearmost friend unless Krishna breaks his vow. Knowing that Krishna would break his vow. And then the glory of Krishna would be seen by everybody. So as soon as Krishna broke his vow, he'd pick up the chariot wheel, started to run towards Bhishma and smash him. He dropped his weapons. That's what he wanted. He didn't want to kill Arjuna. He knew that Arjuna couldn't be killed because Krishna would protect him. That's why he took the vow, to show this glory of Krishna's wonderful quality, Bhakta Vatsala. That's why. It's not contradiction. His higher dharma was eclipsed by the lower dharma. Everything he did was for Krishna's pleasure. We can't think otherwise. It would be offensive to think otherwise. So that's like, the lens to look at the situation through. And then you may be bewildered by why and what, but that's behind it all. There's no other thing for him. That's it. Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Yeah. In the future, when we have home programs and there's small children, just as a rule, the small children should go to some other place rather than see how long it takes till they have to go to some other place. Just go to some other place. The little kids are little kids. They're nice being little kids. We don't expect them to be adults, they're little kids. When I'm done with this, I have some of these flash drives of our yatras. If you're interested, come see me. That'll help you out. Mahaprasad.